Mazzy here. Welcome to the record library, the sanctuary, or as some call it, my yoga room. Except I've never done yoga in my entire life, but this is it. This is it. Top 10 list people always love. So this is a different kind of top 10 list. One I did with my jazz artists. And this is my top 10 artists ranked from 10 to 1, but based on quantity of records I have in my collection. So there's, it's not about the quality of the music, although it probably reflects my personal taste, the quality, what I enjoy, because I dived into these records. I decided to do my entire collection, so there is one jazz artist included. This happened to include, and this is quantity of records. Now, my video, my rules, if there's a box set, I only counted it as one. I didn't count the individual records. I think that's kind of a fair, I guess it would have gone crazy. Now, the number one you can already guess. If you watch my channel, you know what's number one. And I had to kind of estimate the quantity of records there, but we'll get to there. And there are two ties, so I put, so that there's actually 12 records here because two of the categories are tied with the quantity of the releases. So what I thought I'd do, I'd go from 10 to number one. I'm not obviously showing every record from every artist. I picked three artists that represent how I like it, not necessarily my best ones, but for me, records, three of their records that either reflect their catalog for me, that I play a lot. And am I completist with these artists? I would say in most cases, yeah. And so let's get at it. Coming at number 10. Now, someone's going to chime in here because number 10 was actually an artist who was on my wankers list, one of my top 10 wankers as well. And you'll understand why. I'm not going to even go there in this video. But coming at number 10, I have 29 albums of this artist, and that's Van Morrison. And this is Astro Week. Some consider his best album ever. I love this record. I don't know if it's my number one. I waffle between this and St. Dominic's Preview and Moondance, and so. But it's an album that everyone should have. Sort of a folky, organic, a little bit of jazz thrown in, but a total original. And you can't deny his voice, his arrangements, and Van the Man. I've seen him many times over the years, but there's some wankiness involved. But I still love him as an artist. St. Dominic's Preview, an all-time favorite. When I'm in a mood of a Van Morrison album, a lot of times I go for this first. I like how the songs, Listen to the Lion, Almost Independence Day, are sort of long, beautiful, ethereal pieces of music, almost improvisational at times. Opens up with the great Jackie Wilson said, "I'm in heaven when you smile." Just a wonderful, wonderful record here. And one from his mid-period, I'd call it, because he's still making records. He's like the Stephen King of record making. He puts out, seems like, a record a year, 2 records a year at this point. But this is from 1997. I just absolutely love this album, The Healing Game, Van Morrison. So he's number 10 on my list. Van Morrison, The Healing Game, 29 records in my collection. Number nine is a group that those of you who've been watching me know it's one of my top 3 bands of all time. A great catalog. I think every record they made is really good. Obviously, some better than others. And they seem to not get as much love. They're very influential, and that is coming in number 9. I have 30 of their records. Now, in some cases, they didn't make 30 records, but I have mono, stereo, and I did include comps and everything else, and that's the Byrds. Obviously, Mr. Tambourine Man, just a breakout version of that Dylan song. It made it, along with Peter, Paul, and Mary, probably the two artists that made Dylan songs palatable for a lot of early on listeners who just couldn't get into Dylan's voice. I love Dylan, obviously, but the Byrds, folk rock, with a little help initially of the Wrecking Crew and that great twangy 12-string guitar, Rickenbacker guitar of Roger McGuinn, who saw George Harrison in A Hard Day's Night and said, "That 12-string, that Rickenbacker, that's for me. I'm going to go there." Of course, Gene Clark's great songwriting, David Crosby, Chris Hillman, Michael Clark on the first round. You can't deny what a great record this is. But just a fantastic, fantastic. Of course, there's a picture of with Bob Dylan on that debut album. Probably my favorite, this and then Younger Than Yesterday, but Fifth Dimension. Just the opening song, 5D, is this dirge-like, beautiful, ethereal opening. I just love the drone beat in that song, Roger McGuinn's vocal, and of course the great 8 Miles High. And I wish Gene Clark had stayed with the band longer, but what a fantastic record. 8 Miles High influenced partially by John Coltrane. There you go. And of course, you can't deny the importance of this album. It bombed when it came out. The whole, was it the very first country rock album? It's definitely one of the first and inspired so many artists beyond. With the addition of Graham Parsons pushing them in. The original version release, a lot of the lead vocals of Graham were stripped off, and they used the Roger McGuinn lead, and then later editions, CD, and the later Record Store Day, I believe, added the versions along with the originals with Graham Parsons. But what a great song. I got into the Louvin Brothers and a lot of great country and bluegrass style of music. I think this is a very important album. So again, coming in at number 9 on this list, 30 albums I have from the Byrds. Okay, the artist coming in number 8, and I have 31 records by this artist. Again, a couple different versions, mono, stereo, variations, comps as well, and that's Pink Floyd. Debut album, of course. I don't think I could show a Pink Floyd showcase of any, even like a mini one like this, without talking about Syd Barrett and getting this band together and how he kind of set a tone. Now, definitely they became a different band once he kind of imploded and left the band and replaced by David Gilmour. But just his psychedelic drive, his pop sensibilities, his folky sensibilities, and the combination just made for one amazing debut album. Didn't get as much love in this country, in the U.S., as it should have, but obviously over the years, it's become very big. Now, I'm going to show Metal because this is amongst my very favorite album, the album I lost my virginity to, and it's a very special place. Echoes is a very long song, and it's a great song to put on when you're in the mood, but every cut on this is wonderful. It's ethereal, it's ambient, and it's beautiful, and it's that bridge between the early Pink Floyd and what would be, you cannot show Dark Side of the Moon, one of the most important albums of all time, maybe an album that's been heard and played so much. You got to step back from it for a decade or so, but when you listen to it and when you're all in, it's a fantastic record. So again, Pink Floyd, I have 31 records from Pink Floyd, and that is number 8. Coming in at number 7 is David Bowie. And of course, I'm going to show this album. This is the first album I got and I heard from David Bowie. Starman was a song I heard on the radio, KSAN in San Francisco. I bought tickets to see him. He was coming to Winterland literally maybe a week after I picked this album up. And Winterland holds 5,000 people. 500 people showed up for the first show of David Bowie. And I think he was pissed, almost saying he wouldn't come to San Francisco again. I think another important record, that the shifting of Station to Station, kind of funky, kind of electronic a little bit, but Station to Station, Golden Years, very kind of R&B style. The cover of Wild is the Wind, a record that that also, the version by Nina Simone is just stunning. TVC15, Stay, every song on this. This was a grower for me. When I first heard it, I didn't quite get it when it first came out in, was this 1975 or 6 or 4 or 5, I think. Anyway, fantastic record. I got to show his final record. The final record that I bought literally 3 days before he passed. And it really just, it brings an intensity, and it's a chilling so long goodbye to music, to his life. But what a brilliant, somewhat jazzy avant-garde record for a pop album, if you can call it that. But it's a brilliant album, and this is Black Star, David Bowie. And he's my number 7th on the list of the artists I have the most records of in my collection. Coming at number 6, an artist I have the most of in my collection is Jimi Hendrix. Jimi Hendrix and Jimi Hendrix Experience, and I have 34 records, including box sets. Now, I didn't pull the Big Live box sets, but the Winterland box set is excellent. The Groovy Children one is excellent, which is based on this. I'll work a little backwards. This is the New Year's Eve show of Jimi Hendrix with the Band of Gypsies with Buddy Miles, and recorded 69 to 1970 at the Fillmore East in New York City. Fantastic record, a different sound for Jimmy somewhat, but great live record. And this is a great, the Groovy Children box set of both shows, the entire performance. Fantastic to get that, but a Winterland show was great. My favorite is, of course, Electric Ladyland. I've told the story ad nauseum on my channel where I went to the record store. It was New Year's Eve, the year this came out, and they had this, and I brought it home. I snuck it in the house. I was, 14 years old, and I just didn't want my parents to see it. The UK original track record recording. This is by far my favorite Hendrix album, but I could not show Jimi Hendrix without showing the debut. This is a UK track record. I think it's a second pressing, not sure it's the first. And this was, I acquired this from the Coleman collection. My friend had a copy of the track. I have an original Reprise, actually a second press of Reprise stereo. I also have the new UHQR and I think one other edition. But Jimi Hendrix, you can't deny the importance of this artist. And I have 34 records, including mono, stereo, and box sets. Again, I count box sets as one release for this top 10. Okay, this is number 5 in order, counting down from 10 to 5. This is one of the first of 2 ties. Ties, 2 groups that tied. And it, well, let's see what they are. Again, coming in at number 5 with 39 records each. This might be a surprise to some. But then again, if you watch me, you know it's no surprise. Ry Cooder. Ry Cooder, my favorite guitar player, favorite string instrumentalist. And I have 39 Ry Cooder records. Now that includes several pressings. It includes the collaborations, and it includes his soundtracks. So 39 records. Now, Boomer Story, I show this because even though I got the second album first of his, and then I went back, when I got this is when it really clicked for me. This is a great blues record. This could be something right out of the Smithsonian Folkways collection. It's just so good. There's a version of Dark End on the Street instrumental on here, which is just gorgeous. Ry Cooder, Boomer Story on Warner Brothers Records. Warner Brothers stuck with them, with each other. They stuck with each other, but I always applaud Warner Brothers in the late 60s into the 70s, sticking with artists like Bonnie Raitt, Randy Newman, Ry Cooder, Van Dyke Parks, Little Feat, countless records of artists and bands that really didn't sell a lot, but the creativity of these artists can't be denied. So Ry Cooder, Boomer Story. I could have picked this and Chicken Skin Music as a twofer. They're opposites and similar. They're almost like yin-yang of each other. The other one's more Tex-Mex, border songs. Paradise and Lunch obviously has his co-authored original Tattler, which is a beautiful song that Linda Ronstadt also covered. But this has Diddy Wah Diddy, a duet with Earl Hines, the great jazz piano player. I got turned on to Earl Hines because of this song. It's a wonderful song. Tamp 'Em Up Solid. I love the sound of this record, the recording of this record produced by Russ Titelman and Lenny Waronker, 2 great producers, A&R men at Warner Brothers in the day. But this is a fantastic record. And just to showcase one of his collaborations, this might be my favorite, although he'll work with Indian musicians. He'll work with, obviously, the Buena Vista Social Club, which I did not count in my list. That would have put it over the top. But since he's not billed in the title of that, that's a collaboration, but he produced it. I did not include that. But this is Ry Cooder and Manuel Gabon, who, this is very, a Cuban-like surf guitar masterpiece. And it is such a beautiful record with this metallic cover on Non Such Records. And I highly recommend this above so many other records in my collection. I mean, that's kind of a weird thing even to say, but fantastic record. Now, the other band that tied with Ry Cooder is Hometown Boys, the Grateful Dead. There's nothing like a Grateful Dead concert. I have to show this first because this was their first official total live album, Live Dead, from the Fillmore 69 shows. Since then, with Record Store Day, there's been a series of full concerts, or the 4 nights. 3 of the 4 nights have been released as full shows on vinyl, and I can't wait for the 4th. But this changed everything for the Grateful Dead. It started the live thing. They became a live band, Live Dead. What a wonderful record, 1969. But I do have 3 records I'm showing just because I think this is a twin masterpiece. You know, a lot of people say the Grateful Dead are not known for their studio work, but in 1972 records could have been a great double album, but we got great single albums, almost like that overlap of folk, country, rock, beautifully recorded. If you can find the Green Label Warner Brothers Records originals, they sound better than any subsequent release, in my opinion. But these great records, American Beauty and Working Man's Dead, obviously with Friend of the Devil and Candyman and Boxer Rain and Truckin' and Ripple and Broken Down Palace and, of course, Casey Jones, Uncle John's Band, New Speedway Boogie, and I mean, not a bad song in a bunch. And you still have Pigpen in the band here. And then a record that was on my ranking list of Grateful Dead, number 1, Europe 72. And the reason I put this, I think this is a good introduction for anyone, has amongst their best songs. It's a live record compiled from the Europe 72 show. There are some added overdubs, instrumentally and vocal embellishments, but I don't care. It makes it a great record, and it makes them in tune, completely in tune, and it's just a fantastic record, 1972, Europe 72. So that is number 5, number 5, the Grateful Dead and Ry Cooder, both with 39 records each. 4 on my list. Number 4 on my list is also a tie. 2 artists that I have 56 albums each, and one is a jazz artist who was the number 1 jazz artist on my list of the top records I have in jazz, quantity-wise. This is quantity, not necessarily quality. So it's a different kind of list. It's just for fun, so don't get all wonky on me here. This is tied, and the first artist, the first of the 2 tied with 56 records is Miles Davis, Kinda Blue. What can be said about Kinda Blue? Probably the biggest selling jazz album of all time, reissued so many various ways. Kinda Blue, great with Cannonball Adderley, Paul Jacobs, James Cobb, John Coltrane, Bill Evans, Wynton Kelly, and, Bill Evans. I mean, come on. Every artist on it. What a great album. This is an easy entry into jazz for anybody. Miles Davis, Kinda Blue. There you go. Silent Way. This was my number 1 album on my ranking of Miles Davis. Is the Mo-Fi edition. To me, this is my favorite album by Miles Davis, with the great second quintet of Herbie, Chick Corea, Wayne Shorter. Oh, actually, it also has Tony Williams, of course, on drums, has John McLaughlin and Joe Zawinul, and Dave Holland, but Joe Zawinul obviously would later to go on to start Weather Report. So Miles Davis, and then I got to show Bitches Brew. What a change! What a magnificent fusion of things cut together, pieced together by the producer Teo Maceo. As I've said countless times on my channel, I bought this in 1970. I didn't get it. I returned it. 3 years later, I fell in love with it. But initially, the fusion, the kinetic sound, and but John McLaughlin's guitar playing on this makes it something really, really special as well. But everybody does. Herbie Hancock on here. Lenny White, Wayne Shorter. Anyway, an important record. Even if you don't get this record, it's an important record with an amazing cover. Miles Davis. The other artist that tied, and that's with the same amount of records, is the Rolling Stones. Amongst my favorite of the early is the UK copy of Aftermath. I have so many of theirs, partly because, first of all, I love the band. I have everything. I'm all in. But also I acquired almost all of the early Decca records, mono and stereo, not all from the Coleman collection. So it literally like added a third more to my Stones collection overnight. Bittersweet edition, obviously, but Coleman was all in on UK pressings as early as possible, and he had some amazing pressings. So Aftermath of the Rolling Stones, what has always been, has become, and still is my favorite Rolling Stone album, Beggar's Banquet, 1968. Sympathy for the Devil, perfect song. Street Fighting Man, one of the best revolutionary protest songs of the tumultuous 60s, 1968. A song that would basically, and it's unfortunate where we are today in the world, but that song too. But Dear Doctor, Parachute Woman, Stray Cat Blues, that's the cover of the James song, I believe. Prodigal Son, Sultry. I mean, just a fantastic record. Rock and roll, acoustic, bluesy folk songs. These songs, the sounds of the acoustic guitar on this are just fantastic. And it's produced by Jimmy Miller with help from Glyn Johns. Just love this record. And of course, from 1972, Exile on Main Street, a powerhouse cocaine-infused album recorded mostly in the south of France. What a record. I saw the Winterland 72 show. I first saw the Stones in 69 in Oakland and then Altamont. And then over the years, I think I've seen them about 8 times already, but love the Rolling Stones. But so the Stones and Miles Davis tying at this spot. The number 3 artists on this list, these are the top 10 artists I have quantity-wise in my collection. Number 3 puts out records. He's so prolific in his archive and reissues, archival reissues that are somewhat as close as you can get to audiophile. He's a stickler for sound. Now he's got this great archive of live series, but that's Neil Young, of course. And I have 57 records and counting, and they keep going up from him. They put out the archive bootleg, official bootleg series. This has been always my favorite record of his. People think Harvest is a top record, and Harvest is a fantastic record, breakout record. I think back to back, and if you line them up, this, from my point of view, is the better record after the Gold Rush. I love everything about this record. I never tire of this record. It's beautifully recorded, great songs. Oh, just the opening acoustic guitar on Tell Me Why after the Gold Rush. It's just a Southern man rocks. Fantastic record with Joel Bernstein's cover photography and inset photography and Gene's photography and Patches and Levi's, and what a great photograph. I think that made it to the cover of the later greatest hits record of Neil Young, that photograph. I'm showing this. I love this record, but On the Beach, everyone cites this as a favorite. And my memory, growing up with these records, I kept all in on Neil Young when these came out. But I remember Tonight's the Night, this record, Zuma, that period that gets all this love now. Rightly so. I mean, they're great records. Didn't get a lot of love at the time. Everybody wanted another Harvest. And after Harvest, what does he put out? Tonight's the Night, is that the next one? But those series of records were a different Neil Young, not that folky, easy, up top 40 sound, which I admire him for doing that. But they weren't huge records like Harvest and even after the Gold Rush. And to me, in my set, until like the late 80s, maybe even into the 90s, when he became, quote, the godfather of grunge, where everyone was citing this record and Zuma and Tonight's the Night, and the whole period later with Weld and Arc Weld, and the really grungy side of Neil Young being one of the few older artists that young people in that movement really kind of latched onto. And of course, I remember seeing Neil Young when he had Sonic Youth open up for them, and half the audience walked out of the Cow Palace, or maybe that's exaggerating, but they didn't get the Sonic Youth's noise rock, avant-garde out there, just noisy stuff that Neil Young has participated in somewhat, but he's sort of made it somewhat more palatable than, I said it right that time, than Sonic Youth for some people. I love Sonic Youth, but this is an important record, so I need to include that. And one of the later-ish period, a decade ago maybe now, or so, Psychedelic Pill with Crazy Horse. This is a loud record too. This is a jammy record. This is a heavy friggin' 3 LP, triple gatefold, psychedelic, literally pill master work of an art. They should reissue this because a lot of people now who are into vinyl miss this boat. And I remember I passed on this a long time because I think it was like $70 or something. And there was a store here in Seattle. I kept seeing it. A little bit of the loose shrink was sort of torn. It was there for like a year. And I finally was in there one day. I thought, Jesus Christ, I want this record. And I just bought it. But it was sitting there for a while. Now, of course, in the bin, it wouldn't last a day probably. But Psychedelic Pill, Neil Young, that's in my top 10. Number 3 is Neil Young with 57 varieties of records. And number 2 is Bob Dylan. I have 100 Bob Dylan records. Now, again, including all those bootleg series of boxes, if I counted the vinyl records individually, there would be way more. I'm all in on Bob Dylan. I have mono stereo, mono box. I got the bootleg series box sets. I picked the 3, which to many, these would be the 3 most obvious records that represent. But first is Highway 61, revisited, all electric, all in on electric. But partly because, produced by Tom Wilson, it has what arguably is the greatest single of all time. Better than anyone, including the Beatles, maybe. The one song that just epitomized the 1960s, Like a Rolling Stone. I love that song. What's great about this, the Cutting Edge, this is the bootleg series. Now I have the big Cutting Edge CD volume 12, which is up there with all the CDs. It has every cut, every version of tracks from 1965 to 66 that includes the 3 albums, and you hear the progression of Like a Rolling Stone, every version, every slow version, fast version, the rhythm's different, the percussion, the piano, the organ. Blonde on Blonde, my number 1 album pick when I ranked Bob Dylan, of course, Satellite Lady of the Lowlands, and I Want You, and Just Like a Woman. I think this is a brilliant album, possibly the first pop rock double album ever. Fantastic record. Love, love, love this to death. And I will show this, in the other obvious choice from 1974. Almost seems like a comeback. I mean, he was putting records out, but this blew everyone away. The quality of the songwriting, the sound of this record, the mastering. I mean, I'm not always into mastering, but this is probably the best sounding Bob Dylan record. And Blood in the Tracks, I mean, sort of a soulful, romantic, wonderful record by Bob Dylan. And I've heard it so many times, you got to step back from it occasionally. But this is a fantastic album, obviously, from Bob Dylan. So with 100 records, 100 Bob Dylan records, mono stereo box sets, the bootlegs, that's a lot. Now, number 1 of the most albums I have by any artist in my collection. Now, you know what it is. I switched angles here. You obviously know it's the Beatles. Let me say a little caveat, little things I changed out. I did not include McCartney, Lennon, or Harrison's solo records because they would probably exceed most of these with all the different pressings and versions. So I took them out of the mix here, didn't feel it right. But my Beatle wall, those of you who have watched my videos see it. Now, it's 3 across and all the way down with 2 extra cubby holes at the bottom. Box sets, foreign pressings, colored vinyl, UK, Japanese, all these different versions. I have approximately, I didn't count, I mean, I did an estimate, so this is just an estimate. I have 540 Beatle albums, including bootlegs. Wow, that's insane. That's more than a lot of people have all albums, all artists combined. I'm all in. I grew up with the Beatles. It changed my life, literally, after I saw them on Ed Sullivan. And I'm a collector of the Beatles. I just wanted to present that. And I thought this would be a fun exercise. And I was curious and surprised by a few of them. Most of them made total sense. And again, coming from my age and where I grew up and when I grew up, I think that is a legitimate thing. A few surprises. Wait a second. I have to apologize to you all. I made a mistake. How could I forget one of my all-time favorite bands, one of my top 3 bands? This band should have been number 5, which means the wanker Van Morrison would have been knocked out completely at number 10. But I'm not going to go back and re-edit and remix and reorder everything and push everyone back. I ain't going to do it. So you're getting 11. But number 5 would have been the Kinks. Oh my gosh. How could I have done that? 46 records. So between Miles and the Stones and the Dead and Ry Cooder would have been the Kinks at 47 records, 47 albums. Sunny Afternoon is on here. I love this. Too Much on My Mind is on here. The Kinks, Face to Face. Mazzy made a mistake, and I will admit when I make a mistake. Of course, what some consider, myself included, I usually tie with these two records, but the Village Green Preservation Society, which is released on the exact day as the Beatles' White Album. So I think people didn't pay attention, unfortunately, at the time, but now it's considered one of the greatest albums of all time, the Kinks. And then, of course, another album, which is amongst my favorite from 1969, is Arthur. What an important record in their career. Victoria, Yes or No, Sir, Some Other Son, a great anti-war song. Conceptual kind of, Ray Davis, brilliant. Dave Davis, brilliant on guitar. But I'm sorry, Davis Brothers, for forgetting you initially. So I hope this is a little code at the end, my mea culpa in my top 10 list. It would have been number 5 with 47 Kinks records, including a couple box sets in there, counting as one. So thanks again. I apologize, but come on. That's what happens. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe. Half of you who are watching don't subscribe. It doesn't cost you anything. It's free. Push the subscribe and like button. I don't ask for much, do I? Do I? Mazzy loves you, and thank you. Enjoy the music.